Donald Trump's Department of Justice is building a national voter roll that could disenfranchise voters in the upcoming 2026 midterms. 8 Republican-led states, including Texas, have already turned over unrestricted voting data for millions of voters. The Trump administration has sued 23 states that refuse to comply. Their goal is clear: to determine, based on sensitive voter information, who is eligible to vote and who is not. But there's no outline criteria for that decision. Michael Harriet, the editor and founder of contrabandcamp.com, joins us right now. Michael, glad to have you on the show. So explain to people why this is so dangerous. How are they going to impact the vote with this strategy?
So the first thing you have to understand is that the federal government does not control who votes. It has no say in who votes. That's determined by the state. And that's in the Constitution, right? So the state makes the rules. So the federal government can't decide who to vote. For instance, in some states, you have to be registered 30 days before election day. In some states, as long as you have your voter ID, you can walk in and vote. It's called same-day registration. So it varies in different states. And we're depending on Donald Trump's regime or his administration to be competent, right? And we also have to understand that we have to view this through the eyes of his administration basically coalescing everyone's data. Remember that he's already given IRS data to Homeland Security to investigate what he called illegal immigrants, right? And we also have to remember that the biggest owners of the tech companies in the world, right, are on Donald Trump's side, right? We know that his former advisor, Dina Powell, now works for Meta. Well, it's the job of those companies to collate and synthesize data and identify people who use their platforms, right? Well, what's to say that he won't be doing that with your voter information? What's to say that you can synthesize data close enough to identify who voted, right? If you live the only black person on your block and there's only one Democratic voter on your block, voter districts are so small that it's easy for companies with enough data to determine who's vote and to disqualify certain people from voting, right? And so we have to take all of that into consideration, is that this is not an effort to determine who is and who isn't eligible to vote. It's an effort to disqualify voters. It's an effort to help his campaign through his position in the federal government and to help Republicans gain more power.
So for folks who are watching and listening, I need you to really understand here, okay? We do not have national elections. We have 50 state elections. And then we don't even just have 50 state elections. Then it then goes down to the county level. Here's a perfect example. The elections board in North Carolina refused to place an early voting location on the campus of North Carolina A&T, the largest HBCU in the country, okay? Now, it was a 3-2 vote. So the problem is you have a state board of election that the Republicans put in charge of the Republican state auditor because they did not want it to be in the hands of the Secretary of State. And so different counties also operate depending upon that particular state on how that county rules. So let's take Texas. Harris County may have a different voting plan than Dallas County. And so what Trump is doing, and this is where it gets very dangerous, we've seen in the last decade, Michael, where Republicans have removed folks from the ballot. We saw it in Georgia when Stacey Abrams ran. We saw it in Florida. Then we found out later a bunch of people got removed illegally. Same thing happened in Virginia. And so what we're talking about here, where these Republicans are so stupid, they will run these algorithms and they go, Michael Harriet is in North Carolina. There's a Michael Harriet that is in Idaho. That's the same person, so remove him from both voter rolls, as opposed to it could actually be 2 different people.
Right. And we also know that those systems also disproportionately affect Black people, right? For instance, there are studies that show, like, if you have an apostrophe in your name, if you have an accent over your name, like a lot of immigrants do. If your name is spelled differently, if like there are counties and states where you hand your information, you fill out a form and you hand your information to a registrar and they put it in the computer. If those people make a mistake, not you as a registrar, but the registrar makes a mistake on your voter roll, inserting it into the computer, right, your information, they can disqualify you because this doesn't match your license or this doesn't match the ID. And there's so many ways to disqualify a person that if you really look hard enough, it's easy to disqualify, for instance, those 11,000 voters in the state of Georgia that he was looking to disqualify. And it's easier, especially if you have all of their income data, if you have all of their identification data, if you have all of their voter registration data. And that is what we're worried about. Like, he has already predetermined, right? He's already signaled that, hey, we need to, in order for me to win, we need to make it harder to vote.
Yep.
Right. And that part of making it harder to vote, he's putting in place now. Like, there is no other reason to do this.
Well, and again, we had Bishop Barber on the other day, and the reason the Republicans control the House is because collectively of 7,000 votes. And so the Republicans are all about, hey, if we can shave off 1,000 here, 1,000 here, 1,000 there, 2,000 here, 5,000 here, 10,000 here, that's really what it's all about. I always remind people that the Supreme Court voted to allow voter purges. And it was a white man in Ohio who sued and was like, why did y'all remove me from the voting rolls? Well, you didn't vote in the last, I think it was like 2 or 3 elections. He's like, why does that matter? And so the Supreme Court gave them the go-ahead. And so in this notion of to protect voter fraud, against voter fraud and clean the rolls up, they will systematically release people, wipe them out every single year and under all these different rules. And so people need to understand, when we talk about the attack on voting, the strategy is very clear. And the Republicans, this is documented, okay? One, we remember Paul Weyrich in Dallas in 1981 when he said, we don't want everybody to vote. Republicans also are on record as saying, if we can shrink the voting population, we stand a better chance to win. Then they've also on record about saying that if the voter rolls expand, this is why Trump hates 2020 election, because of COVID, the rules were changed. It expanded the electorate. Republicans like, oh, hell no, we cannot have that happen. That's why after the 2020 election, all the Republican states where he won, they still changed their voting procedure because they need to cheat to win.
Right, right. And you also have to understand that along with what you said, when they coalesce this data, right, the easiest way to identify people who don't vote Republican, and this is important also in the cases of gerrymandering, is just by race, right? Like, they like to say, well, it's a political gerrymander, not a racial gerrymander, but the way that they identify the difference between Democrats and Republicans is just by race, right? Like, they know if they have your data and they know that you're Black, there is an 85% chance that you will not vote for them. So they're not just purging like rolls of people who hadn't voted. They're going to be able now, if this thing goes through, to direct their target precincts, right, and purge those precincts, right? And they know with the census data which they own, with the income data which they own, with the Homeland Security data which they own, they know exactly who to purge. And it's only using the specific category of race that they will be purging these people.
Well, and by having this data, the other problem that they have is they now can sit here and break down zip code. They can now look at, okay, run the numbers. How did this zip code, they'll now be able to break this down to the precinct level.
Right. And the precinct level, I think, you know, when you are talking about large towns or small towns, right? Like, when you're talking about breaking stuff down at the precinct level, we've seen malfeasance, go into that. We know that in Georgia, for instance, right? I reported in 2018, it was harder for people in majority black precincts to vote. The voting machines broke down more often. The lines were longer. There's a study in 2018 that took all the cell phone data. So basically everyone who voted, everybody who was at a precinct, they grabbed their cell phone data, and they realized that if you lived in a black precinct, you waited longer to vote. 3 times longer to vote in a black precinct than in any other precinct in America. So they have more advanced data now, and they can target black voters. And again, it's not just purging the rolls and shrinking the electorate, it's shrinking the black electorate.
Well, and this is the same man who said that that he wishes he had seized ballot boxes in 2020. Again, let's be clear. They will try that in 2026. They will try it in November.
Right. And also you have to also know that in these red states, in many of the states that handed him over their data, they have long held this idea that people are cheating at the ballot box, that people are doing in-person voter fraud. And every time they look, they use all of the state resources, sometimes federal resources, local resources, to target what they call election cheating. It's always like 12 people in an election of 35 million, right? Or 17 people, right? Like there is no voter fraud, right? That changes election. There isn't an example. And most importantly, when they find these people, it's always a Republican voter who tried to vote 2 times because they wanted their candidate like Trump to win.
Absolutely. And it's no doubt what they're doing. I want to sit here and bring in my panel right here. Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali, former senior advisor for environmental justice at the EPA, joins us right now. Randy Bryant, DEI disruptor, DC, joins us. And so glad to have her as well. We also have my other alpha brother. Y'all don't mind. We got an Omega guest on the show, so you know we have mercy on them. Larry,
somebody got to class up his joint.
See right there. See, I ain't gonna cut him deep, Larry. I ain't gonna cut him deep. So you know we're gonna have mercy on him. Y'all joining us, Dr. Larry Walker, associate professor, University of Central Florida as well. Larry, you're there in Florida. And this is what Michael's laying out. Florida and Texas and Georgia really have been the 3 states that have been, frankly, the test case for a lot of these shenanigans. And that's where all this stuff is coming from.
Yeah, so Roland, don't forget, we had a congressional, the governor decided to get rid of a congressional seat. And also they're doing redistricting and with session, starting with the session in Tallahassee today. But I want to ask Michael, in terms of, I know he talks a lot about history. What are some of the lessons we could, look at from the past in the African American community in terms of how do we counter some of the challenges we're dealing with today?
Well, one of the best examples of what we could go wrong, right, is remember, right, in the election of 1876, they targeted one county in South Carolina, right, Lawrence County in South Carolina. The Lawrence massacre. They went there. It was a majority black district voting district that was started. That was a county that was founded by a man named Prince Rivers, a Union soldier named Prince Rivers, a black man. And they attacked and just basically lined up black men and killed them. And then in that election, what's funny now is when they go back and do the data, they said that more white people voted in that county than white people existed in that county, right? So they overturned that election, the entire national election, by one county in South Carolina, targeting one county. And the Republicans made a deal that said, we'll move the troops out of the South in exchange for you giving us the presidency. And that is what gave us Jim Crow for another 100 years.
Called the Great,
right?
called the Great Compromise of 1877.
The Compromise of 1877. In a black-owned hotel, they went in a room, 15 white men, and decided an entire election based on one county, right? So this is the thing that we're facing. And how do we counter that? Well, we have to counter it preemptively, right? And it's not just by voting, right? It's attacking the mechanism by which they disenfranchise us. This is an effort to disenfranchise Black people. They're looking at it as voter security. But remember now, if you go back and look at the newspapers in 1955 and 1960 in Selma, what they were trying to do, the reason they were trying to prevent those Black people from voting, the reason they marched across that bridge, Alabama called it their ballot security effort. That is the lesson of all of this. They always use that voter integrity, that ballot integrity, ballot security when they're about to disenfranchise Black people, and we can't let it happen again. Because we stand to lose another 100 years of Jim Crow.
Mustafa.
Yeah, well, Michael, it's good to see you. Big fan of all the things that you write. You just
hey,
talked
Michael Mustafa, also an alpha. Just want to let you know. Go ahead, Mustafa.
I still appreciate your work, Michael. Right. Hey, Michael, you had talked a little bit about security just there. What are your feelings about the cybersecurity risk that this places for so many folks across our country?
Well, there are some cybersecurity risks, but I think what people don't know is when you vote on a voting machine, right? Those machines have cards. Those cards are collected, and those machines are not hooked to the internet. Those cards are collected and put into another machine that is hooked to the internet, right? And I think the risk now is if you look at government documents, right? So all of the government, the federal government's internet security is handled by two companies, Amazon Worldwide Services and Starlink. Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. That is the risk, right? Not the the precinct level voting machines, but the counting of votes, right? I've interviewed people, a guy, an election security expert, who showed me one of these machines and said, hey, let me show you how I can change these votes. And in 5 minutes, he went into a voting booth and rigged the card so that when they tallied the votes, it would be miscounted. And that is the security. And again, when you're federal, the safety net in all of this is that there are so many different systems and so many different states and so many different precincts and so many different people that work at the voting rolls that it's hard in this disaggregated system for somebody to commit a malfeasance that could overturn a national election unless you put one federal government in charge.
All right, Randy, batter up.
Yeah, good to see you, Michael. You know, of course, I'm a huge fan. You know, as I'm hearing you talk and I'm seeing what's happening with, you know, how they're trying to change the postmark date when we're doing mail-in ballots with the USPS. We're talking about, you know, we have Bezos and Musk in charge of the machines, and now them trying to claim that we have a bunch of ineligible voters. I mean, I am trying to figure out what can the average person do. I mean, we just go and check to see if we are still seen as an eligible voter. I mean, what can we do? I'm always just wondering, how can we fight against this?
Well, so there's a couple of ways, right? One thing that I always, first of all, nationwide, right? The best voter security is hand mark paper ballots, right? Hand mark paper ballots, it's hard because you can always take those and recount the votes, right? So hand mark paper ballots are very important. But on a personal level, right, if you're worried about, you know, you being in a Republican county or, you know, the poll workers in your county, it's almost, I mean, it's advisable to vote in advance by mail or get an advance voting and take it to your registration office, right? That is, to me, the most secure way of voting, right? And that's one of the reasons they always want to attack like ballot harvesting, is because they are attacking the most secure ways of voting. Another way to, I think, to attack this, right, is like preemptively help our side. like help the side of democracy, right? Like I always advise people, never, ever, ever, ever go to the voting booth alone. If you go into the voting booth, somebody needs a ride, take somebody with you, right? Like just that doubles the number of voters. If you keep that in mind, right? It's double the number of voters that you can affect an election with, right? And I think if we take those small steps, right? Like I would never, ever, ever, right? Like if your grandmama having a party, if your church having an event, there should be voter registration forms there. From now until election day, it is to me malfeasance to have a gathering that doesn't allow people to register to vote. It might be somebody new in your town that hadn't had the chance. All like those kind of small efforts make a large difference when it comes to election.
Folks, the threat we are seeing is very real when it comes to voting. Michael, while we got you here, you dropped another story on Contraband Camp. Go to my iPad. Trump wants to silence his critics. Colleges, corporations, and nonprofits are doing it for him. Subhead reads, as America pivots towards authoritarianism, institutions across America are not just ditching diversity, free speech, and facts, they're embracing the fascist fad, too. And you lay out here what we're seeing. We are seeing, we really started last year, and we're seeing where corporations are canceling MLK programs, Black History Month programs, Women's History Month program, Black Music Month program, Hispanic Heritage Month programs, all the sort of stuff along those lines. We're seeing where they're targeting affinity groups inside of those corporations. We're seeing where universities are kowtowing as well. Texas State University canceled this mobile Black History museum. And the impact, and I've been talking about this, the downfall, the impact has been tremendous. It has economic impact in terms of you have Indiana University, Indianapolis canceling their MLK breakfast because of actions from the Republican governor in Indiana. We can go on and on and on. And so they're canceling programs. The impact of that, which I've been trying to explain to people, is you're now impacting vendors. You're impacting caterers, audiovisual companies. You're impacting PR companies. You name it. You got nonprofits. I was at Susan Taylor's National Cares Mentoring Gala last year. The week before, you had a corporation that was a major donor said, hey, we're not going to honor that commitment. We're pulling out. And it was a huge blow to their fundraising efforts. And a lot of the folks in these companies that were behind a lot of these investments, Black folks, got laid off. And so people need to understand, when I talk about there's a deliberate attempt to defund Black America, that's really what your article is laying out. And not only are you defunding Black America by canceling these events and shutting them down, these universities, especially these state institutions in red states, or even in some blue states, are kowtowing to the pressure because they're afraid of being targeted by Trump's Department of Education.
Right. And we see this, let's take this conversation that we were just having about voting, right? Like, we know that, like, there was a report last year that basically, between Stacey Abrams and LaTosha Brown, they basically registered almost everybody in Georgia that was eligible to be registered to vote. Part of the reason they were able to do that, right, is because they would go speak at a college and they could make their money and donate and use the rest of their time, right? They didn't have to charge anybody to register to vote, or nobody had to pay them, right? So a lot of the work that a lot of the activists and freedom fighters and organizers that we know, they depend on speaking gigs. In other words, someone like Alicia Garza might go speak at a college, and she talks to them about organizing, right? And so she doesn't have to charge $1 million for the nonprofit work that she does, right? Or she doesn't have to raise $1 million for the nonprofit work that she does, because she has enough time, instead of fundraising, to do the actual on the ground work, right? So that's why it's important. And it's also important is because a lot of times at many of these colleges, right? Indiana, all these schools in Texas, I went to school in Alabama, right? So Alabama is 27% Black, right? The school that I went to, Auburn University, is about 4% Black. The only time many of those students get to hear from a Black person is when there is an invited speaker, right? So by removing those voices, you're decreasing the diversity of their education and increasing cementing all of the white thought that they learn in K through 12 by saying, I went to college and nobody told me any different, right? And that is the danger of this, that not just the silencing and the income that Black people are losing, right? But they are perpetuating the narrative that they already told their kids when they were young by defunding these institutes, by defunding these corporations, right? The Nike, for instance, if it has an MLK Day, right? So I write about AT&T. AT&T would have a diversity seminar for all of its employees at their corporate employee conference every year. And then they promised the Trump administration that they were going to eliminate DEI.
Yeah, because the Trump administration. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
7 days later, the Trump administration approved them for a merger to buy U.S. Cellular.
And that's because Brendan Carr, the FCC chair, he has publicly said, if you do not, it wasn't just AT&T, it was Paramount, it was other companies. If you do not get rid of these programs, I am not approving any acquisitions, any mergers, any deals. And so these telecom, listen, Verizon was supposed to sponsor an event that I was there, and Verizon literally said, hey, we can't sponsor this because Black is in the name, and the FCC is going down. They've asked, what stuff are you sponsoring? And if they see Black or Hispanic or women or LGBT in the name or the organization, they're like, red flag.
Right, and it's not just like these big corporations. It's not just these white colleges, right? So. An HBCU, I was scheduled to speak at an HBCU, right? They texted me that morning and said, hey, like, we're just wondering if you're on the way to college. 5 minutes later, they texted me back and said, hey, don't come, right? I bet you
like, what the hell?
Right. I didn't know what was going on. I eventually found out that, we were together when we found out, matter of fact, well, yes. that this DEI stuff was the reason, right? And like, it's hard to criticize them because if you're a small HBCU and you risk offending this company, like if they can target Harvard, what you think they're going to do to a tiny little HBCU? And it's important also to know, like, that HBCU had required every student in their freshman class to read my book about Black history. So I wasn't as mad as like I wouldn't get to talk to them because they were worried that someone was going to find out that they basically used state funds to purchase a book about Black history, right? And that is the atmosphere of fear that many schools are living under, that they preemptively capitulate to appease the Trump administration when Trump don't even have to silence us because they're doing it for him.
Yep. Self-censorship. The Austin American Statesman reported this a week ago. Go to my iPad. This University of Texas graduate wanted to help diversify Hispanics in pharmacy. And he tried to create a $100,000 endowment, but Texas Exes, their alumni association, denied it because it's focused on diversity, because it was for Hispanic scholars. And so, and again, so when I try to explain to people how they are trying to defund Black America, so we know the affirmative action decision, how they attack the affirmative action in colleges and admissions. So they're attacking that. I think that was, well, first of all, at Auburn, you had a couple of magazines, one targeting one where African Americans and women were centered. They targeted those, but saying, oh, no school funding going to that. We see other scholarships. I mean, people don't understand what these MAGA white folks are doing, and this is all tied to my book, White Fear. They want to shut down all avenues for Black people, for Latinos, Asian Americans, Native Americans, anybody non-white from being able to go to college, being able to get jobs, because I keep saying it. The browning of America is driving these white folks crazy.
Right, and like there's a great example of like these fraternities and sororities. My undergraduate fraternity has a scholarship, an endowed scholarship, so it's in the university's endowment fund. And so they told us, hey, if it's in our endowment fund, you can't designate that it goes to a Black student, right? Because of the state laws, right? And what we reported on is that many of these universities are doing this preemptively. They're silencing speakers and telling them, hey, you can't say these words because the state might defund you. One of the best examples is
Go ahead.
At the University of Wisconsin, there was a DEI, the Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. He had funded this group of Black students, this Black group, who recruits Black people to the University of Wisconsin. So the University of Wisconsin benefits, but they knew, hey, when you recruit Black people live in the South. So when you get them up here, what's the one thing that we can do to make them come here? Well, they bought them coats, right? They spent like $17,000 on coats. And the university tried to say that they were just buying folks coats for DEI. Right? So that's how they vilify DEI, by making it seem obnoxious and demonizing it, instead of saying this is a thing that will help our university and our institution.
Come on, crazy it is. Look, go to my iPad. I had to deal with this at my alma mater, Texas A&M, and they actually ran the president off. This was one of the reasons Christopher Rufo, that white supremacist, and then and Greg Abbott, that white supremacist governor of Texas. That was a conference. And the conference was to the whole point of the conference, you'll see it right here, it was to send folks there to recruit prospective minority doctoral students. And these folks attacked them, calling it DEI, and the governor literally said to the president of the university, Texas A&M, this was the PhD project, point blank, if anyone from A&M goes to that conference, I'm going to fire you. And this is to create, so their whole deal is, no, you're not going to conferences, you're not going to events, you're not going to receptions. And so many schools are like, hey, you know what? We're doing nothing. We're doing nothing because they are afraid. And even if you, and again, I'm gonna go back, even if you talk about, even if you fight it, use the example of the HBCU, being very scared. Listen, you got a Black president at George Mason University in Virginia. Trump has been targeting them. Luckily, you had folks that know we're standing by him. They ran off the white president at the University of Virginia. Oh my God, too much DEI focus. They ran off the Black guy who was a superintendent at Virginia Military Institute, and that's because you had a Republican governor of the state. Now, of course, you got Spanberger, who's Democrat. But people need to understand what's going on here. Even if you are, let's say, Governor Westmore in Maryland, Trump's like, okay, I'm going to attack the research dollars of your institutions. So your governor can protect you. Your legislature can protect you. But I'm going to attack the research dollars the federal government gives to you.
Yeah, it does not matter, right? Like, capitulating does not help you escape the tentacles of this authoritarian administration, right? The only thing, so you might as well stand up. Like, I remember a friend of mine saying, well, if they gonna shoot at me anyway, I might as well fight them, right? So I think that's what we have to understand. They are going to shoot at us. That's what they're doing with this voting project that they're trying to capitulate, get us to hand them over our information. That's what they're doing with speaking engagements. That's what they're doing on every front. They are shooting at us, so we might as well fight anyway.
And I'll say this, Mike, and I'm actually working on a book. I wish it was coming out this year. It's going to come out January 2027. And I've been making this point repeatedly that today is the Founders Day for Delta Sigma Theta sorority. Is it y'all Founders Day coming up, Randy?
Yes.
Did it pay? All right. So you got AKs coming up. You've got these different civil rights organizations. You've got Prince Hall Mason. You've got Links. You've got D9. You've got black data processors. You've got national. I was talking to somebody saying the black MBAs, which always had a huge conference, that they damn near may have to go virtual because of so many companies pulling out. We were at Afrotech. This is what I've been saying. What has to happen in this moment? This is a moment, Michael, where all of this black institutional infrastructure that we have has to read the room, has to recognize the moment. This is where we've got to have black organizations standing up, fighting on behalf of black people. And I say it, the Executive Leadership Council, they're supposed to be the big black corporate organization. They ain't saying shit when it comes to the tax that's happening in corporate America. And I'm sitting there going to the point, they laying your members off. They're firing your members. So you being silent don't do anything. It is stunning to me that a year has passed, and maybe it's happened, and maybe you heard about it, Michael. Maybe I ain't heard about it. Maybe Larry, or Randy, or Mustafa's heard about it. But it is stunning to me how you have not seen black organizational leaders collectively move to go to corporate America and say, let me be real clear. If you sit here and play games and you don't stand with us, then we are not going to keep using your products. The only way you can fight, folks, is you got to fight. Laying down ain't a fucking option.
Right. And I think that's what people don't understand is we have the infrastructure and we have the power. Right. If it was like, for instance, right, all of those organizations that you talk about, Delta Sigma Theta, Omega Psi Phi, like we have banks now, right? Like what if we said, hey, we're going to pull out all of our money, put them in our own banks, right? If y'all keep capitulating, because just as they have to capitulate to Trump for the sake of profit, we can force them to do that to us too. Right. We see what happened at Target, and we just kind of didn't even go fully into that. If we start pulling our money, our resources, and not just pulling them, focusing on where we are going to put them. We're going to put them here and give your competitor a specific advantage. That is how you wield power. And we have that institutional power. We have that economic power. We just have to wield it. And these organizations have to take the lead because like they're scared, like we can't be political because they'll take our 501c3. Look, we see these white dudes on church praying for Trump and talking about Joe Biden is the devil, and they don't lose their tax exempt status, right?
And also
like,
that is a lie.
Be brave enough.
And that is a lie. You can't endorse a candidate. It doesn't mean you can't be political. It doesn't mean that you can't talk about public policy and say, we support this bill. We support this legislation. We are against this legislation. That shit pisses me off. And I'll say it for so many, especially a lot of our D9 groups, we are so risk averse. We've had leaders, don't wear your colors, don't wear your letters, all this sort of bullshit. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? And so there is a massive assault against Black America happening. And I don't just name check the D9. I also name check Sigma Pi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, the Boule. I name check Prince Hall Mason, Eastern Star. What pisses me off is we have massive infrastructure. We've got international organizations, national organizations with regional, state, grad, undergrad. We got programming going all the way down K through 12. And we got impotent ass leadership who, to me, is so focused on their insular business and not the business in the attack on Black America.
Right. And this summer, almost every one of those organizations that you mentioned will have a national conference. And we have to find a way to wield that power in those cities that we are talking about and across the nation. We have to send all of those people back with a directive on how to save ourselves inside the structure of this country. Because without it, what are they for, really? Like, I mean, the colors are pretty, but what are they ultimately for if they are not doing anything for the people who they're supposed to be serving and the people who created them?
Absolutely. And so I being hardcore about this. And so, folks, do me a favor, y'all. Hold on, give me 1 second. Let me pull it back up. I want y'all to go to, contrabandcamp.com. Hold on 1 second. I'm pulling it up. No, I told y'all don't go to it yet. It ain't loading. Finish loading. Slow down. All right, y'all can go to it now. Go to contrabandcamp.com. A number of stores on there, but I also need y'all to subscribe and support. I've made this point before, folks, that in this moment, we got to depend upon us, and we do not. Let me be real clear. I'm gonna say this. I ain't got no problem saying it, Michael. You do not have a lot, and when I say a lot, I'm talking about maybe I can use both hands. We do not have a lot of reporting that's going on. Let me be real clear. We got lots of commenting.
Right.
We got lots of commenting, but we don't have a lot of reporting that's going on where people are being interviewed talking about the subject matter. And so we've got to be supporting Black-owned media. And when we look at what we spend money on, I'm telling y'all, we spend lots of money every single month subscribing to streaming services to catch entertainment and documentaries and comedy shows and stuff. But I've always said, the greatest problem we're always going to face is a dearth of real substantive information to give us a sense of what's going on right now. And so you've got to support outlets like Contraband Camp. So go to the website, you can click their Substack, you can subscribe, you can do monthly, you can do yearly, but I'm telling you, it has to happen, y'all, because listen, we're in this, okay? This thug, he ain't going anywhere until January 2029, okay? So we need to understand these attacks on us, they're not stopping. They're going to intensify. So Michael, a great job. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase, and I'm here with a very important message. We are at a turning point in the Black community where we must have equity in the apps we use that scale to billions of dollars. But this time, we own the infrastructure. We own the culture, and we shape the future. And Fanbase is the future. Fanbase combines the free functionality of Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube into an all-in-one platform built for the evolution of social media and monetization. With over 1.4 million users, that's real proof that we are shifting the conversation of tech ownership and equity for creators. So right now, I want you to go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest today. The minimum to invest is $399. That gets you 60 shares of stock in Fanbase at $665 a share. This marks a turning point in Black ownership of social media. If we don't take this opportunity to own social media right now, we will always be customers to our own creations. And that can't go on. So once again, go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest today. We must own the platforms where our voices live, our stories matter, and where our culture drives the world. Thank you.